There's a friend of mine who knows as much as anybody could or would want to know about my present job situation. Made a comment we had an email back and forth earlier today, or yesterday and today. And this didn't really resonate with me right away. I just started thinking of it as I'm out here right now. But he knows the backstory, and there is a hell of a backstory behind this this entity that I now work for. A backstory involving them and myself. At this point, I don't detect anything to suggest that the people I'm working with know anything about it. I know, however, that the hiring parties dipped into my so-called public life, if you want to call it that. And maybe they know enough about my connection to this entity. But I'm going to remain discreet about it. Partly, for one thing, I stand by what I said. I think I said earlier about feeling that the relationship between an employer and employee is nobody else's business, unless you become a CEO or a master of millions or something like that. But for this level of work, I just don't want anybody I don't really think anybody needs to know. And I get a little paranoid about people knowing exactly where I work, the physical location. But whatever the case, it's a long-winded introduction, but the friend who knows as much about this whole situation as anybody would described my employment at this place as performance art. And that had not articulated itself in my mind, but he ain't wrong. That's kind of what this is in a way. There's a shopping cart for you. Maybe it'll all become clear in the fullness of time, or maybe I'll just keep it to myself forever. Take it to the grave. Take it to the urn. But there's no major scandal going on here or anything. And me being discreet about the job, there's no indication of it being super secret or high level. It's nothing of the kind. I'm not working at the CIA. But when I do think about what I'm going to now call the performance art aspect of all this, let's just say there are certain words I'm never ever going to utter in this place. I'm just never going to say certain words. And if you know two things about me, you might be able to guess what those two words are. I'm never going to say anything really about anything outside of the workplace. You know what? I'm thinking that the Link peeps did their maintenance this last night or overnight. That's when they do it. They do it from, I think, midnight to 8 a.m. because I put a bunch of cards out here just not even 24 hours ago, and they're all gone. So far, at least, they're all gone. So that means these ones I'm putting out now will probably be available for a couple of weeks, or as much as a couple of weeks. I think I'd said before that I was under no delusions or illusions that this is an effective form of advertising, if I can call it that. But you know, and I'm no slave to numbers, or statistics, but I was looking at just comparing listenership from 2 months ago, or however long I've been doing this, and it's definitely up. It's like reliably so. And I'm never expecting this to be popular or anything. I have been tuning in myself to the radio because I've been trying to see if I've been waiting to connect with people who call in for it as a chat line. That little hidden feature that suddenly became not so hidden. And the way it works is if one person calls in, they hear the audio as expected. But if a second person calls in, the audio stops and you're talking to the other person that called in. And it's always been like that, but nobody discovered it. I didn't think anybody ever would discover it until a couple of weeks ago. So I call in myself, and I end up listening to myself talking on the audio, and it can be pretty fucking depressing. It's not news to me that I can be a pretty depressing motherfucker. But I already feel like that's a life lived. I mean, it's done, that the payphone lifestyle. I don't know. I mean, it's been done since quarantine, really, but somebody is going to be writing an article about it, and in the interview questions he asked me if I was going to keep doing it, and I'm like, well, first of all, it's not even practical anymore. There's no way I could use these stupid link machines as a replacement. They're horrible. Call quality, you just sound like you're in a fucking bottom of a lake. And you have to absolutely scream. The only way to be audible is to fucking scream. And I'm not a screamer. Not that you asked. But he asked me if I was going to keep doing this, and I'm like, well, not really practical, but even if it was, I don't have anything to prove by doing this for the rest of my life. And I've moved on to other things. It's a big deal. There's nothing sacred about the ritual that Yeah, well, I guess these maintenance guys just tear it off. Yeah, I littered, so don't hate me. We'll see if the one on Northern works yet. It's been dead for months. That's funny. They took away my card but left the out of service thing. In other words, they did nothing. They fixed nothing. To make a quick back up, or to get back to the performance art aspect of things. I really don't think I have any reason to think that they would fire me or terminate, as they like to call it, on account of anything to do with the backstory. But then again, there was a pretty thick bunch of paragraphs about conflict of interest issues, which did kind of give me pause, but I didn't read it all thoroughly because it was too much to read in the moment. But it's just hard to imagine they would go that way. I am left asking, though, who knows what, if anything. Who besides HR? Yeah, those buses always hit those white things. I'm surprised they're still standing. Those white poles, pylons, I think they're called. I got into a pissing match once with somebody about the fact that orange cones, traffic cones or whatever they're used for, can be called pylons. Pylon. She simply refused to believe it, and she was really genuinely angry that when I proved I was right, that that's an appropriate term for those things. Pylons. Here's the site of what used to be the COVID-19 testing site. This is where I got most of my tests done. And this is also the lot that used to host the famous Rogue payphone. But they finally bulldozed that thing. So the plan before COVID was to turn this into to build a new school here. And I guess that's what they're finally doing. And maybe this is still being used as a testing site. I don't know. There's nobody here. I mean, if it is, it's very much scaled down, but because it took up the whole lot, pretty much. I remember I encountered one woman at this testing site who was on a first name basis with, seemed like everybody, all the workers there. It quickly became evident to me that she had made getting her weekly COVID test like a centerpiece of her social life, which sounded about right to me, given quarantine and isolation and all that. I don't usually come up to this one, it's kind of far, but what else am I going to do, right? What else will I do with this precious gift of a day? I know what I'll do. I'll get a hot dog. When I think about discretion in your place of employment, I'm sort of subconsciously or stream of consciousness reminded of Jenny from the JenniCam, which some folks might remember it as an early internet phenomenon. Shows you how much things have changed. It was just phenomenal to people that there'd be a naked girl on the internet. She just had a webcam set up, and it was in her bedroom, and you'd see her sleeping, and you'd see her having sex, or you'd see her just living her whole entire life laid out to dry, laid out to bare. And she did that for I don't remember how long, before suddenly it all just seemed weird to her. But I have to dig through old articles about this if they're still out there, but I seem to remember she's probably going to get a New York Times obituary for that. But the articles I remembered, it seemed to indicate that when she shut down her cam, she made a big honking deal of not telling anybody where she was going to work, and she made a big honking deal of not revealing to her employer that this was her past. And that's the kind of discretion that I appreciate in terms of who you work for and who works for you. It's nobody else's business unless you're a very influential person at the company, or it's your company, or whatever. All right, look at this stuff. I thought it was more interesting than it looks. By the way, she was. I was up for consideration. I was going to be on the Letterman show once. That was a tense crossing of the street with that guy. The Letterman show contacted me once to be on the show. It was after a New York Times piece about my site, my payphone site, in which I mentioned Letterman as an influence, which is totally true, because he used to have a shtick where he would call payphones out on the street and talk to whoever answered, and some of them were just so hilarious. Some of the best comedy I've seen, but you know why they didn't choose me was to be on the show was they were looking for some kind of internet thing, because the internet was just becoming mainstream, I guess. And I remember Dave always being really crotchety about it. He's like, don't need it, don't want it, don't care about it. And the way he would say www dot whatever was very revealing. And I guess I'll never know for sure, but I think they didn't book me. They went with Jenny instead of the JenniCam. And can you blame them? Can you blame them? You've got this like depressive payphone guy, and you've got a hot young thing that gets naked on the internet. I also just didn't come off as funny in the phone calls with the screeners. I mean, they didn't say that, but I know that's the case. That's another thing I had in common with Mr. Apology. And the apology line was, they were talking about booking him on the show back in, I guess, the 80s. And he said the same thing I did, that he just wasn't funny, and that's true. Got this dude collecting tales of torment and woe. Oh, that's obnoxious. Alan said the exact same thing, that they never told him outright, but he actually got as far as being in the same room with Letterman. I never got past the telephone screens, but like I said, he said the exact same thing as me, that they never told him outright, but he knew he wasn't funny. I think Dave's, like, his guests might have evolved away from strictly being humorous or such, but that's what they were looking for at the time. Getting back to the new job, it's all I can talk about, right? We had a meeting with a presentation rather, with somebody from the Equal Employment Opportunity Division. Oh wow, this one's still here. I think that's just since yesterday. I guess the maintenance guys didn't get to this one. we had a meeting, a presentation from the equal employment guy, equal opportunity employment or equal employment opportunity, whatever the hell they call it. Was that guy talking to me? I don't know. But he was just threw out the question, like, what criteria would you think would be on the list of things that you cannot discriminate against or you cannot base your hiring decision on. And, you know, the obvious ones were age, race, creed, religion, yada yada. And I suggested body art. And he said, you know what? I don't think that's on our list. And maybe it should be. But I don't know. It reminded me of a Joe Frank radio piece, radio drama. Where he, I guess this is fictional, but he took a job at a bank. And one day just started showing up at work with some kind of like a shroud over his head or some kind of head covering, face covering, like a turban maybe, or that's not a head covering, that's just a top, but like a hijab. I dated a Muslim woman, you'd think I'd know how to pronounce that by now. But, you know, this was a bank with customers coming in, and they let him get away with it for a little while, but then they sat him down and opened page 855 or whatever of the Code of Conduct, and they basically said you're not allowed to wear what you're wearing because it's just the appearance. You know, you want to create a non-controversial customer experience or something. But I've seen, and the body art thing, I actually did think that was an EEO criteria that you couldn't discriminate against somebody for, but I guess it depends on the context. You know, if you have enough of that stuff that you look like a toolbox, it can be kind of disconcerting to some people. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually add, you know, body art, and meaning, you know, tattoos and piercings, and I guess that's it. It'll be interesting if they actually add that to their criteria now. I mean, I actually knew somebody who claims he was denied a job because of his tattoos. A job somewhere on Wall Street, I think. Speaking of the JenniCam, I always liked her. Like, I never had any contact with her, but I'd seen some comments, and I guess she posted articles to her site or something. I don't even remember anymore, but she just seemed both like somewhere down to earth, somewhere between down to earth and crazy. But I connected with her misgivings about laying yourself out to dry like that, laying yourself out for all to see, because I've done it myself. I've been doing it since probably before she was doing it. But I've typically been what I guess I'll call discreet. I don't mean to keep using that word, but I don't think it's ever been, well, that's not true at all. I had a webcam on in the early days, pointed at my bed. I still get clicks on that URL, even though it doesn't exist anymore. Sarabji.com/bedcam, I think. There are still links to that site, to that page out there, and it's been gone for like over 20 years, probably longer. But Jenny was cool, and I sort of wonder what she's up to these days. But maybe she rose up like a phoenix and started doing her cam again.
And they ended up.
There's a shopping cart for you. That one's owned by a canner, or owned or used by a canner, a recyclable picker-upper. Okay, I couldn't remember why I went back to the JenniCam thing. But I just remembered it was because she was active around the time of that CU-SeeMe was a bit of a fashion. CU-SeeMe was, I don't know if it was the very first video conferencing software to be used on the internet, but it was certainly among the first of its kind. And it worked such that it was even realistic to use it over dial-up. But anyway, you'd tune into what were called reflectors. Today, I guess you'd probably just call it a channel or a room or something, but in their verbiage, they called these meeting rooms reflectors. And it was hard to find other people, or at least it seemed to be for me. So once in a while I'd find like one person sitting there in a very grainy, pixelated image, pixelated live video stream. But I'm gonna wait a minute before I tell this. But it could be pretty time consuming trying to find any random person to chat with on CU-SeeMe. But one time I found a room that had 9 people in it, which was the maximum number of connections you could have in that one reflector, and I thought, oh, this is great. So, but this was dial-up, of course, so I said I'm just going to get up and go to the kitchen for a few minutes while all these grainy pixelated video streams squeeze their way through my modem. And there were 9 people there, all right, myself included. When I came back to the kitchen and all those images had formulated, I was just looking at a wall of cocks. It was just a whole bunch of dudes jerking off together. And I was like, ew. I saw that today. I'd probably just laugh at it the way I'm doing it right now, but that was the big bad world of CU-SeeMe.